Hi to everyone. A startup. A startup is a common word today, and you see that after every two to three people in a queue wants to do a startup for their career and are very motivated to do startups. But before you do a startup, I want to ask you that how many people actually know the depth of a startup or a foundation of a startup, and how many people actually know what is the meaning of a startup. So this could be a bit demotivating that if you have these reasons which I'm going to discuss now, if these are the reasons for you to do a startup, you shouldn't do a startup, because these are the facts. So let us begin today's video. If you think that you have an idea which is very innovative, let me frankly say this, that an idea which you think is innovative is already in the heads of 1,000 people. So if you think that idea, I have an idea and I should do a startup, so let me tell you, my dear friends, every startup is an imitation. That you pick up any startup, even Google is not the first search engine, even Facebook is not the first social media platform, and every startup is an imitation. So ideas should not be the reason to do a startup. If you think that you are not good in studies, doesn't mean that you should do a startup, because in a startup it needs a lot of research in terms of various things like financial research, market research. You need to study a lot. So if you are not good in studies, doesn't mean you should do a startup. So a lot of people say that they are good in communication skills, so they could be good in marketing, and they should do a startup. Let me tell you frankly, my dear friends, that marketing is not about communication skills. Yeah, you need good communication skills, but it doesn't mean that communication skill is only about 10% in marketing. Rest 90%, they are the different things. It needs your creativity in marketing, it needs your research in marketing, it needs your efficiency in marketing in terms of cost. You need a lot of things while doing a marketing. So if you think that good in communication skills can be good, can be the reason to do a startup, please don't do a startup if you think like this. So before doing a startup, if you think that you need to do a startup because you don't like your boss, you don't want to do a job, doesn't mean that you could be good at a startup. Because in a startup, everyone is your boss, even your customer, even your investor, even every employee is your boss, because you need to hold them together, because you have created that team, you have hired them, so you need to make them work together for you and then lead the startup. So it's important that if you think that this is the reason to do a startup, don't do a startup. So even when you think you have resources like money and manpower or a team, doesn't mean you should do a startup. So what should be the reason to do a startup? And what are the pillars or foundation of a startup? तो स्टार्टअप होता क्या है, एक्चुअली स्टार्टअप होता क्या है? You want to know? Yes, the startup is simply the maximization of the wealth of the shareholders of the company. Yes, let me repeat it again for you. Startup is the maximization of the wealth of shareholders of the company. So what are the pillars of a startup? The pillars of a startup are: first, sustainability; second, scalability; third, profitability. If you think that your business model is sustainable in the market, it could beat the other competitions in the market, because will be always competitions. Either you choose any field of business or any field of a startup, you choose any area of a startup, there will be the competition. So your business model should be sustainable, that it could sustain in the market. Second thing is scalability. A kirana store is a business because it is not scalable. You have 24 hours. You could have a shop or a store which has limitations, but an online kirana store is a startup and can be a startup where you could scale your startup by covering up the larger geographical region, by extending your geographical region. Profitability. In a startup, if there are the no profits in your business model, that is not a startup, because these three things are something which should not be left for some day. These three things should be discussed among your team, inside your mind, should be planned before you think of doing a startup in any sector. That is my business model, is my startup sustainable, is my startup scalable, is my startup profitable. If these three pillars are standing, then your foundation is strong and you could reach somewhere in the startup. Otherwise, there is no use of doing a startup. It is a drain of resources, it is a waste of resources. Simply that, wastage of resources and time both. So here we end the first part of the video where I discussed about the reasons of doing a startup, which are actually the myths. Before doing a startup, please check these three factors: sustainability, scalability, and profitability in your startup, and then do a startup. So I will be coming with the second part of this video where I will be discussing what you shouldn't do when you start a startup. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.